And we're live! Welcome, House of Champions. You, your friends, dropping your comments and questions in the chat, and make sure you hammer the like and subscribe button as we review the Champions League final between Manchester City and Inter Milan. Welcome in, everybody. Fun show planned today, and what will be the last one for a while. We're all extremely tired, but extremely excited to chat some Champions League final action. Finally, I've got the boys. Finally, I've got all my boys in the House of Champions today. Slow introduction and golf clap for every single one of you. Nigel Rio Coker, how you doing, buddy?
I'm not your boy. I'm just your colleague for now.
Thank you for my colleague, Nigel Rio Coker, for turning up here. My boy, Michael Lude, how you doing? Golf clap for you. How you doing?
I've seen better days because of a certain result over the weekend, but I'm happy to be here.
You sport about 18 clubs, by the way, mate. That's unbelievable. James Bench, little golf clap for you. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, also not your boy. I appreciate I'm by some distance the youngest in here, but I'm not a boy anymore.
You're certainly young enough to be my son, James Bench. Don't you worry about that one. And there he is, Jonathan Johnson, just, hanging out. He was the last one to get into the group chat, so apologies for the delay here in France. It's apparently a different time zone. How you doing, JJ?
I'd prefer to be titled your drinking buddy, but I'm also considered part of the cognac club as well with Nigel Rio Coker and Mike Lahoud. So good to be back on with you guys.
That's what Nigel wanted to be called, my drinking buddy. Now, look at his face. As soon as you said anything about drinking, his smile just appeared out of nowhere. Let's get into it, boys. What a cracking weekend it was. Obviously, the Champions League final was highly anticipated. Manchester City fans all around the world expecting to see a convincing victory. They get the victory 1-0 against Inter Milan. Rodri, 68 minutes into the game. Michael Lahoud, your overall thoughts on the game. We'll go around the group here. Just give us your initial reaction to the game and the result for Manchester City. We'll begin with you. We'll go to Nigel. We'll go to James, and we'll go to JJ.
It wasn't the most convincing City performance we've seen all season long, but they got the job done, and there was credit to Inter Milan and how they defended. I thought Inter did well. We'll get into the weeds about that, but I thought they did well to nullify a lot of City's strengths throughout the match. City weren't as sharp in the final third. I forgot Erling Haaland was in the match except for that early chance, but credit to the main man that got it done, James Bench. He had mentioned something about Rodri being, Benj, you say one of the best midfielders in the world? He sure as hell proved it with that strike to get the big title.
Yeah, although I don't think he'd agree that he was one of the best midfielders in the world yesterday or Saturday.
No. But he came up.
Who gave him the Man of the Match award?
Someone who wasn't watching the game. We live in a corporate society nowadays, James. Let's be real. Come on. Go corporate.
NRC, let's go.
I'll just say, listen, I'll keep it simple. I think it was a good game of football in the sense of watching when you talk about tactics and stuff and how the game has really evolved to another level. Inter Milan, for me, we've got to give credit for how well coached they are, because the performance they put in this weekend is what we've seen them do throughout the Champions League. And I know it might not be great for some or entertaining for some, but you've got to give credit when you see teams coached like that. And the only reason why I say that is, some of us on there have been there, and then some of you guys have interviewed top players at the highest level now. There's a lot of egos to deal with. But when you can get all those egos and all these big personalities to go in the same direction and same line and to be coached, it's not easy to do. It takes a strong top manager to be able to do that. And for me, they were well coached. Yes, they're a defensively minded team, but there were times when they had great possession against Manchester City at the edge of the box. We've got to give credit for that. There were times when they were looking very threatening in the attacking sense. And it wasn't a stroll in the park as most people thought it would be for Manchester City. And luck was on City's side, because an inch either side and Lukaku gets an equalizer, and we could be having a complete different.
Oh, give over, mate. Phil Foden should have banged that in the back of the net. Let's move
but
on.
He didn't. And Lukaku should have banged it in the back of the
net. But he didn't. He didn't.
Go either way.
But Martinez should have scored before that anyway.
Thank you, JJ. There you go. So anyway, overall,
and Haaland should have scored in the first half, but he didn't. We could just go on and on about this bullshit. Come on. All right, if we're just going to have this conversation, we could have got those 20 chances there. Should have scored here. I mean, anyway, finish off, Nigel. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I just thought, honestly, overall, I just thought it was a good game of football, and you'd have to say City overall were the better team in the end, and they deserve to win it.
Yeah, unfortunate for Romelu that he has such a big body. Oddie, to quote the great Megan Thee Stallion, who
Oh
I'm
God,
sure we'll
James,
offer him some commiseration in the future. Mate, Romelu's won. Let's be clear. He may not have
I'm
got that
guessing
medal.
that Beyonce concert was a good one, James, was it?
But
Yeah.
oh man, it was incredible. It was phenomenal. Springsteen on Friday as well. What a summer I'm having. I don't know. I thought what was very interesting about this is I thought that was probably the worst I've seen Manchester City play all season. I thought Pep Guardiola totally messed up his tactics. There was this sort of weird insistence on playing John Stones as really a right winger. Certainly, it was almost the sort of role that De Bruyne or David Silva plays even on occasion as well. It's right-sided advanced 8. I thought Stones was like the best. I kept writing, this is brilliant by John Stones for a centre-back, but you had this centre-back playing as an attacking midfielder. It seemed a bit weird, especially with Kyle Walker on the bench. But that was the problem was I thought Inter Milan played really well, but it kind of reminded me of a good mid-table Premier League team disrupting the best team in England. They worked really hard. They were organised. Didn't pose much of a threat beyond City's mistakes and, the desperate late swings. And then City could have, completely the wrong plan, not really get Haaland into the game, lose their best player, De Bruyne, to injury. All those things happened, and yet they were still really good value for the win. Just shows you how much difference there is between City and most of the rest of the field in Europe.
I mean, there is a huge gap, and we saw the difference at the end of the day in the result. But I do think that Inter, ran City a lot closer than many of us expected. I had City running
not all of us,
my
Mike.
goal, but I had more goals overall in the game down for that one. I did pick Stones as my man of the match. I was kind of chuffed about that, seeing as he spent so much time doing step overs on the edge of the Inter box, which was quite a rarity. I imagine that's going to be a collector's item in a couple of years' time, the day that John Stones was basically playing number 10. But no, it was I feel that Inter will be really gutted that they came so close to potentially putting up the upset, but just not quite being able to. I think there's a number of players in that team who could probably hold their heads high. Again, I was impressed by DiMarco, who obviously hit the crossbar and then had his rebound blocked by Lukaku, and another day that perhaps goes in. But realistically, I feel like Inter, you look at when Mkhitaryan was thrown on at the end of that game, it was 5 minutes from time. Him missing in that midfield for Inter, I think really deprived them of a lot of technique and a lot of guile. That said, I thought Brozovic had a decent game, sort of intercepting, doing what he does best, kind of just mopping up there in the midfield. But, when they tried to go forward, tried to create, they were missing so much. Dzeko, I thought, put in a good shift for an hour or so, but it just kind of feels like they fell short. And had certain personnel been fit, then maybe they might just have pulled off a bit more of a surprise result and taken it beyond 90.
Couple of comments coming in here already. Vic jumping in and saying full house this morning. Big up to everybody. We got a surprise for you later on. And Vic, I'm sure you're going to be pleased to hear this news. Ali A. Nigel loves to hate on Manchester City because his beloved Real Madrid lost against them. Ed jumping in here and saying, Michael Hood, who's your pick for next season's Champions League? I need to know who I should not back.
That's the best.
Our people know as
That
well.
is the best comment of
man,
the year so far of the show. That is it. Just go against Michael Hood and you will be fine. He is the Drake curse.
Ed,
have you guys noticed he's pulled down the lead scarf since they got relegated as well?
Got no time for a team in the Championship.
Mike, just put the Man United scarf up next season, and then hopefully we'll see what happens with them, hey?
Wait till I'm going to start backing all your teams next season. I can't wait to see the Drake curse. Just fan to all your clubs.
Listen, my team's FC St. Pauli, all right? We could do with any type of luck. It could be good or bad. I don't like to be that middle club. Just give me some sort of, one way or another. That'll be fine for me. Real quickly, Mike, I got to touch upon the fact that this was an impressive treble for Manchester City. Obviously, now Manchester United, not the only English club now to have achieved that incredible record of the treble with European Cup and Champions League. Your overall thoughts on this dynasty that Manchester City are creating? I think we're all an admirer. We all expected a bigger performance. City were certainly not at their best. But at the same time, this is a treble, and this is something that's just rarely ever seen in world football, let alone for English clubs in general.
I'm impressed. Even as a United fan, you have to give credit where credit is due. The expectation, the weight of the world, the way the City team played, And you have to remember, this is a City team that threw all their tactics out of the window when how they were playing at the first half of the season, switched to a back three when they were playing a back four, and really centered their game plan around one player, the missing piece from the last few seasons. City, they've been playing with a false nine, and they almost won the Champions League with a false nine, Kevin De Bruyne playing that. For Pep to reinvent the wheel, to get Erling Haaland, that was the masterstroke in there. But then different players, Ilkay Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne coming to life. I mean, remember, Phil Foden, he was an out-and-out starter for City a season ago or the last 2 seasons. So credit to Pep, really impressed at the end of the day.
I mean, I just want to say this as a neutral, or at the very least, someone that doesn't particularly wish either club all that well. It will pain me to say this to Mike Lahoud, but
don't say it.
You have to say it. Manchester United's treble was the better one.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Why? Why,
Because,
James?
first
Why?
of all, because you have to do it with a little bit of drama. I think the challenge for City is it was all a little bit too easy for them. You know, if we put these two teams together, faced off, you know, at the peak of their power, City would be the better football team and would win the game. But, you know, as an achievement, you want it to be done with a little bit of spectacularity. And United had that all the way through, winning the league on the final day, winning the FA Cup in dramatic fashion. And, that thing at the Nou Camp. So I'd rather win the treble, you know, as a fan, I would rather win the treble the way United did than the sort of slightly breezy way that City did. But of course, what this does mean is there's only one Invincibles and there's 2 treble winners. So,
boy. Right, so this is a question for James and JJ. Then Michael can be quiet on this. Would you say there's a bit of an asterisk mark on Manchester City for winning the treble in the sense of the investigation that's still ongoing with Manchester City? Is that fair to say? Because there wasn't this kind of situation with Manchester United and the money that's been involved with building this dynasty at Manchester City. Would you say it's not been the same playing field as what Sir Alex Ferguson did at Man United?
Yes, pretty much.
Go for it, James.
I mean, we have to remember that, like, you know, Manchester United were by some distance the richest club. It's not, you know, and you probably have to be the richest club to win. But I do completely agree with you, Nigel. I think it's,
but there's a difference when you say that, James. When they say they're the richest club, they were the richest club by winning trophies and continued success. So they got money rewarded for being successful. Now, when you look at Manchester City, how that's come about, it is a lot different to what we're seeing. And they've literally
also controversial, Nigel, as well. If you think of some of the big names that he got rid of at Manchester United on the way to success, like, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was just before that they got rid of like Inzaghi and all those guys. I mean, just booted them out the door. It was like you were thinking, what the hell is he doing like here? But these were incredible decisions at the end of the day. Go ahead, Nigel. Sorry.
No, that was it. I just wanted to ask the 2 experts, James and JJ, what they thought if there's an asterisk mark in this treble compared to Manchester United.
Well, I think as well, the other thing with this City success is it kind of feels like we've been counting down to this sort of ever since, City got to the point where they were started to be talked about as potential European champions. We've just been counting down to, you know, when they dominate absolutely everything, the Premier League, all domestic cups and the Champions League. So maybe by that token, you know, we should be criticizing City and saying, well, they didn't win the League Cup, so it's, all been for nothing. They should have had a quadruple to their name instead of a treble. I know it's a bit, sort of nitpicking there, but no, it kind of feels like this is an inevitability that we've counted down to.
Mike, you got anything to add here before we move on?
He doesn't have to add anything.
Well,
I noticed that Nigel said you were not an expert, so
yeah, I couldn't help but notice that. Who's Nigel? I don't know who. No, just kidding.
No, I didn't get Mike involved because I wanted it from educated journalistic point of view and unbiased.
Yes. So my only point is, James, can you remind us who the mutual team that United and City both beat to win the Premier League on their way to their treble? My memory is a little flat.
Yeah, that was the Arsenal team, the only team to have gone 38-game Premier League season undefeated. That was that one.
Maybe a different season. I was going through my stats. So if you beat Arsenal, you get in the title race with Arsenal. Trebles do come your way. No, I agree with what everyone's saying here. What City achieved is amazing, but what that United team did to get it to the final countdown, to win the league on the final day, FA Cup, the heroics, and I mean, I don't think we'll see anything like that, but there's something in the water in Manchester, apparently.
Sami Kuffour punching the turf in Catalonia.
Yeah.
One of the greatest moments of my life. I'm just going to say that. Pep Guardiola won his 300th game in charge of Manchester City on that Saturday night. He needed only 413 games to win 300 games in charge of Manchester City. We got a nice comment coming in here. And of course, it sounds like it's a very good friend of mine, Scally Whiskey, saying, Ian, you're a little annoying today. Just a little bit. That's why he's the host. Thank you very much, Scally Whiskey, for tuning into the show. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Vic jumping in saying Pep Guardiola is the GOAT here. We have Umbav coming in and saying Madrid already have Bellingham. If they get Kane and sort out defensive issues, can they challenge City next season? Seeing that Inter played, seems like Ancelotti got his tactics totally wrong. We'll discuss that on the other side of the break. Ed jumping in and saying United won a treble with the likes of Johnson and Butt and Blomqvist. There's regulars, no disrespect, but that is miraculous. I mean, listen, there's no denying that what Manchester United did. They were obviously very lucky at the closing stages of the game against Bayern Munich, but it was a tremendous achievement. Let's turn our attention to Pep Guardiola before we do go to break here. Mike, I'll come back to you on this one. Guardiola obviously gets a tremendous amount of respect from every single one of us for what he has done here. Many people talking about being the greatest manager in history. I mean, would ask you that one, being a Manchester United fan. You can clearly see the trophies that he has won. But let's not forget, he's had a fair penny to spend on players to bring to his clubs over the generation. So let's not forget that.
Yeah. So that's a differentiating factor. I think Pep Guardiola is the best tactician of all time, and there's some great ones, Johan Cruyff, to name a few along the list. But in terms of the complete manager, the GOAT, Sir Alex Ferguson, what he did with that United team to bring the youth through, to make them the core, and to manage that and sustain that. And football's changed so much, but to manage that and sustain that for the longevity that he did with one club, I think it's incredible and puts him slightly ahead. But Pep is definitely in the equation with this Champions League treble.
Nigel, your overall thoughts on Pep Guardiola? I mean, obviously he's done a great job. As a City, you bring Erling Haaland into the club, they get a cut price deal of 75 million. He scores 35 bangers in the league, or 36, whatever it was, 52 goals this season, and it made a big difference to Manchester City compared to what we've seen the last time they were in the final.
Made a massive difference. Erling Haaland was the difference maker. They got him for a reason, and it's proved to be worth every penny they spent on him. But like Michael said, I agree. I think the difficult thing is in this generation is everyone loves a quick fix. You see it with football clubs now and directors. Everyone thinks the quick fix happens like that. There's always going to be mark against Pep because every club he's managed, he's been given massive resources, whatever he wants, and spent pretty much whatever he wanted to get the success. So Alex Ferguson built Manchester United to where they are now. That's the big difference. He's been there for such a long time. Again, with Pep, could he stay at Manchester City for another 15, 20 years and win 20 titles? I doubt it. I think it'll be too competitive. But one thing you can't deny is the amount of trophies he's won in such a short space of time. You have to give him credit for that, because to win the Champions League and, league titles, it's not easy. It is very difficult to do. And you cannot deny the tactics and the coaching behind Pep Guardiola by every club that he's been at. You can see that he's had an immediate influence and impact in style of play of every club. But I'll just like to say that I agree with Mike, sadly. I think that I would still put Sir Alex Ferguson ahead of him because of the longevity of what he's done. And when you say Manchester United, you can't say it without Sir Alex Ferguson with the foundation he's brought. And there'll always be that question mark. Could Pep do this at a lower league club, at like a club like Brighton, at a club like Aston Villa, and build them up without being the massive resource?
I'd love to find out one day.
that would be fantastic.
Well. You know what, Ed? That is a great comment. Fergie did it with Aberdeen as well, a European title. That's what I'm saying. So let's not just continue to see the glitz and glam right now.
He deserves to be the GOAT for his post-match after the Scottish Cup final when I think they beat Rangers in the final. He said, "Oh, it's not good enough. It was absolutely shite. They think they can celebrate. They've got another thing coming. Just won the cup. And just winning the league and you're off to Europe, and it was apparently not good enough for a club like Aberdeen." James, what's next for Pep Guardiola? Obviously, Nigel touched upon it there. We recognize that he is obviously in demand. He is also a human being. This type of pressure, I can only imagine, is immense for someone like him. Even yesterday, I don't know if you guys do the same as me, but I like to watch the clips of the players celebrating and him leaving the hotel, and everybody's hounding this guy. You can't walk 2 yards from someone taking a selfie and wanting to speak to Pep Guardiola. At some point, you would think he needs a break from all of this nonsense, but he is an absolute genius of what he does. So what is next for Pep Guardiola and your overall thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Just even today, as we speak, a couple of guys that are really close to Pep and on the Manchester beat. I know Rob Dawson at ESPN is one of them. Is reporting that Guardiola won't go beyond his contract in 2025. Now, 2025 is a long way off. He might change his mind. And one thing having spoken to him once or twice, one thing since he's been at City, he always does seem very happy, very settled there. This is a club, remember, that was built for him. He has lasted a lot longer there and been somewhat less burnt out than he has been at Barcelona, than he has been even at Bayern. But it can't go on forever. He doesn't seem like the sort of manager that wants to do 20 years. I mean, it would be 9 years at the end of his contract. That's a big, big stint, even by, even looking back to the 60s, 70s, when we all think managers lasted 400 years and were then, then calcified into stone. After that, from the my suspicion is it will be an international job. It will be, can I get the Euros and the World Cup? And maybe that's actually a great way for, to sort of show that you aren't just a transfer budget. You aren't just, the richest club. I know that, he will go to, maybe if he goes to Spain, he's not going to go to Luxembourg and win the World Cup with them. But if he took the Spain job, you have to work with what's given to you. And I think that might be an interesting way to rebalance the view of him, because of course he couldn't win the league with Aston Villa or Brighton, but no one can, because football doesn't work like that anymore.
Oh, jeez.
Hold on. James is getting real above his station right now just because Arsenal competed for the Premier League title where a top
what would need to happen?
Arsenal fans are above themselves.
What would need to happen for Brighton or Villa to win the league, though? Just having a good manager, what they need to do is have a 60,000 seat stadium, Champions League revenue for 5-10 years. Probably owners that are looking to sports watch their global reputation. I know it happens every once in a million years with Leicester, but
so it happens. That's what you got to say.
Yeah.
JJ. I'm just gonna keep my cards close to my chest. I'm happy with doing Emery at the moment. I'm happy going to Europe next season, but I wouldn't say no if Guardiola fancies a little bit of a stint at Villa Park one day. No, I mean, just sort of adding to that. You know what? It really wouldn't surprise me if he leaves before the end of his contract. I think if his next move really is an international job, makes sense after the Euros in 2024, see what's available. I mean, there's already speculation, I think, that the Spain national team job is probably going to be back on the market again at some point in the near future. It sounds like De La Fuente, it's not quite working out how they hoped it would with him. Whether or not he sees it all the way through to the Euros, we'll have to wait and see. But if we are talking potentially about a Spain, maybe even a Brazil, even though Ancelotti seems, to be lined up for that one, it wouldn't surprise me if Pep would want to be in it sort of for the 2 years leading up to the World Cup, as opposed to just sort of parachuting in 1 year before. And I think as well, given what he's now achieved with City, given that he's got them over the line with that Champions League, I don't think they'd stand in his way if he wanted to leave a year before the end of his contract. I do think he'll want to see if he can go one better next season, not necessarily win a quadruple, but, do back-to-back Champions League titles. But for me, it wouldn't stun me at all if he leaves 1 year before the end of his contract. And in fact, if it is his next move is to be into international management, it would actually make a lot of sense to me if we're talking about him leaving City this time next year.
He'll take over England. John Stones playing right midfield.
Stay away from that job. Stay away from that job.
Also, just going back to the debate about who was the best coach, I think the shout for Ferguson is great. But Ancelotti, having won the Champions League across basically 3 decades, 3 totally different styles of football, I think that deserves recognition as well.
And he kept Everton away from the relegation zone.
Probably the biggest achievement in his managerial career.
Do you know what, JJ?
So did Frank Lampard.
I think, JJ, you're right in saying that as well, because Ancelotti's someone that I say up there as well. But the only reason for me why I say Ferguson is because you look at what Ferguson did at Man United. There will never be another manager that does that, to stay at a club that long and win 20 domestic titles and obviously do the treble and all that. That's what is the difference. Longevity is the key.
I'm just going to test Michael Hood right now because I know he watched this Champions League final in great depth. How many passes did Erling Haaland in the Champions League final have?
Oof,
have a guess.
Man.
10.
I'd say 5.
10.
James is almost right. He had 8 passes in the final. He touched the ball 19 times. How many successful passes did Erling Haaland have from his 8 passes, Michael?
6.
Oof. I'll go 7.
3 successful
3,
passes
wow.
in the whole of that game. Touched the ball 19 times. It just shows you how well the Inter defended in that game. And that's where we're turning our attention to next, right here on House of Champions. Stick around, everyone.
We're going to see some really fast boats.
Up you go, Ben. Come on, mate. Up you go. Start time, right? I think we've got space on the other side of him, right? Settle. Oh, you did it. Hey, here we go. That was sick.
Streaming live on Paramount Plus, the ultimate international soccer rivalry is renewed when the USA takes on Mexico in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals. The US is 2 wins from defending their title, and it's once again Mexico standing in their way, looking for revenge. This is more than just a match. This is a battle for regional bragging rights. USA versus Mexico this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, streaming live exclusively on Paramount Plus. Please try it for free at paramountplus.com/live sports. Welcome back
to jump in there. I need to jump in here.
Go ahead.
The ultimate international soccer rivalry is the USA against Mexico.
James,
Have a word.
James,
you
don't
have
start.
no idea, James. You have
James,
no
don't
idea. We're going to get you out. We're going to get you out to a game. You'd love it.
Yeah, have you been to one
England,
of those
Scotland.
games?
You got to come out to
all
watch
other
the game.
countries.
Yeah.
Listen, James, there's nothing like playing a home international game against Mexico when 98% of the stadium is full of Mexican supporters. There's nothing like it.
Yeah,
It's a
I can
rivalry.
imagine.
It's the first time playing at home feels like playing away. Trust me, James. It's an experience you wouldn't understand.
It is absolutely wild.
Until you
All right.
come here.
Let's get back to the Champions League final. Of course, Manchester City getting the job done, 1-0 here. JJ obviously tactically approaching this game. Inter, I think we can all say we expected Man City to score more goals in this game, but Inter seemed to tactically get it right across the board in this game. They still looked very dangerous side. They could have scored a couple of goals in this game, probably should have scored a couple of goals in this game, and I was very impressed. However, I just wonder if he should have gone with Lukaku instead of Dzeko. Overall, JJ, your thoughts on the tactical approach from Inzaghi's men?
I mean, it's an interesting debate who he should have gone with up top. But I think starting off with the defense, which you rightly praised, I kind of found myself in moments being surprised by how sort of relaxed, almost too relaxed the Inter defense were, because there were a couple of sloppy errors that let City in. Onana had to make a really good save, in the first half, and I just thought maybe they were so confident in their ability to lock up the defense that they were trying to focus on other aspects of their game, which was maybe not necessarily the right approach to take. Then again, you have to factor in that Mkhitaryan clearly wasn't fit enough to start. Had this not been a Champions League final, probably wouldn't have even been in the squad at all. Only getting that 5-minute run out at the end. Having to put Brozovic in instead of Mkhitaryan, suddenly that changes completely, the way that midfield functioned. And I think Lukaku, Dzeko, there was always going to be a debate. I think if you put Lukaku in from the start, he probably wasn't going to go as long as Dzeko did, going the hour. And I think sort of in terms of the kind of thankless task, the shift that Dzeko put in, I'm not sure it would have worked the same way as Lukaku. I actually think that Inzaghi made the right move in bringing Lukaku on when he did. Perhaps even could have thrown him on at halftime maybe. But equally, when it's sort of poised at 0-0, I think he was trying to keep his cards close to his chest in case they were able to play and take it beyond 90 minutes. And ultimately, I actually think that Lukaku coming on, despite the fact that a lot of people are going to dig him out about the chances that didn't hit the back of the net, I actually think that he created a fair bit. He gave into this focal point, this threat that suddenly started to stretch the City defense. He did get a shot off, which forced Edison to make a save. To be honest, if we're talking about sort of assigning blame for missed chances, I think Martinez is just as guilty, if not more, than Lukaku, because he was put through clean on goal by City, shooting themselves in the foot, and still couldn't sort of put the ball away. And Lukaku, very unfortunate to get in the way of DiMarco's rebound effort, and the chance that he had, it could have gone anywhere. I thought Gozens did really well from the bench. probably could have done with seeing him a bit earlier, in fact, because I think he had that good header at the end that was saved, also headed across for Lukaku for that headed chance. I mean, it's a miraculous save by Edison, and Diaz, does really well to sort of get in and block it with his body the second time as well. So there was a large element of, misfortune really for Inter that they didn't manage to score. But equally, it was always going to be a question of how long Inter could prolong the inevitable, I felt.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think for people who are saying that City were by far the better team, did not watch the same match that most of us watched. If you look at the XG, when Lukaku came on, Inter at the final whistle, they almost doubled City's XG. So when was the last time a team doubled City's XG? Something we haven't seen throughout this season. Where Inter got it right and spot on was in the midfield. City play a box, right? It's been talked about. 4 players set up in a box. Inter, they drop their 2 strikers, and they already have a midfield 3. That creates an overload of 5v4. City looks stupefied, and that's what forced John Stones stepping out and higher up the field in a position we haven't seen throughout the season. And it's unnatural and create an imbalance for Manchester City. Where the goal happened, and there are flashpoints in it, with Phil Foden making those darting runs, what we saw from Bernardo Silva, was the movement of Bastoni. If Bastoni doesn't step out of the back line and just waits for the midfield to shift over, then I think that goal does not happen. Football is a game of moments, especially in cup finals. And if you get one moment wrong against a world-class like City, you will get punished. All City was looking for was getting one moment right in the box. And on the other end, Ederson, he has to have a golf clap for him. He stood on his head. A lot of luck in some of those opportunities. If he didn't come through, we're looking at extra time. And I think Inter, my prediction, original prediction, if they get that goal, Inter goes on to win it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the XG, though, it all comes in the last 10, 15 minutes after Rodri has already scored. I wouldn't overplay that because, you have to swing for the fences. And unfortunately for you, Romelu Lukaku gets in the way of your shots, and DiMarco, has as good a headed chance as you can wish. The XG was like neck and neck until Rodri scored. I mean, I think City might even have been shading it slightly. Briefly on Inter, I think there were Manchester City and Inter Milan fans who had a tougher route to Istanbul than Inter Milan, the team, did over those games. Let's not get carried away. They were a good team that put in a brilliant performance, but they just didn't have the quality to dictate the game in midfield. The press was great, briefly discombobulated City, but this was a team that did its best work getting there. I hate to sound harsh, but I think that's the truth.
On an easier path as well, James, right?
Much
an easier path to the final. And
other than Napoli.
I actually thought that they would have lost to at least one of the Portuguese sides there, and I thought the Portuguese sides let themselves down over those 2 games there. Nigel, what's your overall thoughts on Inter tactically and obviously their performance?
I think I got to give credit for me when well-coached team. They played to their strengths. And yes, like James said there, I'll just add on to that. They just didn't have that extra bit of quality in midfield. But again, my thing is this. It's the coaching aspect that I give credit to, because it's not easy to do that. People think it's so easy, to be a coach or a manager and this and that. If it's that easy, then why did Chelsea have such a horrible season and crumble so much with the money they spent and the talent they have? You look at their squad. It's not easy to do. And Inzaghi did well, worked to the strengths that he had. And it wasn't as easy a game for Manchester City as people say. Whether people want to say City didn't play well, that's your opinion. But when you look at how Inter are coached, and to what Michael's saying as well, just to add to that, it's the sense of football intelligence where it's not always about being in one-on-one situations. It's picking the times when to go one-on-one with a Manchester City player or when to just block off the space and sit in the space, because City's movement is always happening all over the time. If you don't know how to coach a team to say, right, if he goes there, you've got to communicate to this player behind you to pass him on. You block the space because this is what they're trying to do. That's all part of management and coaching. And that's what you got to give credit for, because you've seen times when teams play against Manchester City and they get fooled by that dummy run. There's no communication. They follow the runner, and then in Manchester City cut through you like we've seen them do. It's that aspect you got to give credit to. And I think it was a decent game of football. I personally would have started Lukaku, in my opinion. I think he's more of a threat. He's very aggressive. And I think that's the one negative I would say against Inter Milan, because I think starting Lukaku would have probably made City sit a little bit deeper and be a bit more worried and scared.
Nigel, am I right in saying this one here? Maybe I'm wrong here. I'm not an attacker, but when you're starting a game mentally, you've just finished your warm up. It's almost as if when those chances come, you're a bit more ready than what you are when you come off the bench. Sometimes you need a couple of chances to get into the pace of the game. Opportunities came pretty quickly. He obviously got in the way of the one, was it DeMarco? I can't remember who it was that tried to head it in. And realistically, you're not necessarily up to pace with the game. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
No, Ian, you're 100% right. The game has moved on now, that no matter what position you come in, it's so hard to come into the game straight away because the pace of the game is frantic. And to play into that, it always takes about 20 minutes or so. I think the easiest position to come into the game, in my opinion, I'll probably say is the wingers. Wingers are the easiest position where you can maybe just get the ball, carry the ball, run it, and, maybe get crosses in. That's about it. But coming in as a striker, a midfielder, or a defender in that spine of the team is probably one of the hardest positions to come into a game. I hated coming on as a sub, as a center midfielder, because catching up to the pace and getting into the flow is so difficult. As a striker, you're not warmed up. You're not striking balls.
It's probably because you spent about an hour sulking on the bench before coming on.
Yes,
felt you should have started.
I knew I should have started, JJ. There's a difference. Not I thought, I knew. Mentally tough and ready, all right? Stick down your pipe and smoke it. But no, you're right, Ian. I think even if you look at it, we could take it to the Fiorentina game versus West Ham. Who made the big mistake coming on? The centre-back that came on for Fiorentina made the biggest mistake. And it's so vital when you come on. And like you said, as Lukaku's on the bench, he's not striking balls into the goal, getting his feet ready and being ready for action if anything comes his way. So that definitely, I agree with you. That does make a difference.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to discuss the UEFA Team of the Season next, which included a fair few of Manchester City players, and we've got some breaking news for JJ coming next, so stick around.
Phenomenal! Absolutely magisterial here!
Artilharia do Campeonato Brasileiro.
Welcome back into the House of Champions. You enjoy Nigel Reo-Coker, Michael Hood, James Benge, and Jonathan Johnson. JJ, it looks like Monchi is on his way to Aston Villa as their new sporting director. Sky Sports reporting as a major reorganization of the club. It's not a bad person to have involved in your club, Monchi. Someone who's had tremendous success, now potentially moving to the Premier League. It sounds like it could be a done deal.
Yeah, really interested to see how this one plays out, assuming it does get over the line. Let's not speak too soon because we know what happened to Villa a couple of weeks ago with Alemany when they thought they'd managed to prize him away from Barcelona, only for him to do a U-turn. I do think that developments at Villa these last 24 hours or so have been very interesting. Let's not forget, secured the signing of Tielemans a few hours before the Champions League final kicked off. And then you've got Perslow leaving at the top of the club, which is quite interesting because assuming Monchi comes in, you'd have to assume that Langer probably moves upstairs because it doesn't sound like he'll be leaving the club. So he'll be replaced as the sporting director by Monchi. I feel more comfortable about Monchi moving out of Spain and away from Sevilla this time than I did when he moved to Roma. Because let's not forget, he wasn't great with the Italians, but before
you addressed that very quickly. I like that.
No, but I mean, I think the fact that he's got Emery there, somebody who's obviously worked with him before, they know exactly what they want to do, where they want to take Villa. I think it's definitely an exciting development.
Nigel, you have anything to add?
I just want to jump in. I'm very disappointed at Villa. I'm sad that Ashley Young has left because I thought he had an absolute outstanding season for them last year, and I think he deserved a lot more than how things have played out. I must say I've got a bit of information, but I'm going to keep it quiet to my chest. But mate, I'm very disappointed.
This is the last one for a while, all right? So it's very difficult for us all to get fired. So if you've got something controversial to say,
to be fair to Nigel, though, I mean, Ashley tweeted basically saying that he hopes he'd be part of the European Nights the next season, and then the news dropped the following day that Villa weren't taking his contract up. So it did seem like it was quite harsh and very quickly done. And I agree. I think, Ashley Young's been phenomenal for us since coming back, and the experience that he has, despite the fact that he's not getting any younger, no pun intended, is, I think it would have been a big plus for Villa going back into Europe, especially sort of in the early stages of the season as well, going through the qualifying rounds to get into the Conference League.
Yeah, I've been told to move on. There's way too much Aston Villa chat here, all the way back to the Luis Miguel Echegaray days here. So let's get back to the UEFA team of the season, James Benj. Obviously, watching a lot of these players across the board this season, it's been fabulous to watch. And it's very difficult to pick any type of team of the season here. But what's your overall impressions here? 7 Manchester City players in the mix, including one that didn't even start in the final.
Yeah, and Kyle Walker only played 3 games beforehand. I mean, I do kind of sometimes wonder if the UEFA technical observers watch the tournament that they're technically observing. Kyle Walker was brilliant against Vinicius. Like, if there was one game that gets you a spot in the team for the tournament, it was that one. But you know, the tournament just lasts 13 games for Manchester City. Andre Onana was robbed in goal. Statistically, if you like, you know, XG, goals prevented, all that. This is the greatest season that we have numbers for by a goalkeeper was Andre Onana. That's pretty much the only one. I think it would have been nice to get some Napoli representation in there because they were so good in the group stages, and people do tend to forget that. But yeah, I mean, my big annoyance is so I would. Onana in for Courtois, move John Stones to right back, which is where he played more often, and get Zielinski in there. That would do me very nicely.
I've got one to add. I think Nicolo Barella is deserving of being on team of the season. No. Inter Milan don't get to a final without his outstanding play. I know you don't agree, but I say this is a guy that when Lautaro Martinez and Romelu Lukaku didn't show up through the group stages, he was their best player. Throughout the knockout stages, he came up with goals and assists. I think he should be there.
Michael, I think DiMarco has to move further forward, you know, because that's where he was deployed basically in terms of the goals created from open play. The other thing that I would say is I actually think Acerbi would have a strong case to be in ahead of Bastoni. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that Bastoni had a great tournament, especially in the knockout rounds. I don't think he had a particularly good final, but Acerbi, you know, for sort of where he was like sort of 12 to 18 months ago, to be part of that Inter team is just a phenomenal achievement. And he wasn't just sort of part of it in that he was on the pitch. You know, he was a very important part of a great defensive effort, you know, over the last couple of rounds.
Nigel?
Nah, nothing to add to it, mate. Popularity.
All right, well, I'll come to you on the next news then. Saudi Arabia apparently eyeing Neymar here. And I'm actually intrigued to get your opinion on this one, Nigel Reo-Coker, because as a former player, I just wondered if the money came around to you ever at one stage in your career where you had the opportunity to take money and leave. You never had the chance. I thought the Whitecaps, Whitecaps or Chivas USA would have offered you.
Didn't it earn you a pretty penny going ice fishing in Norway for like 2 games or wherever it was?
That was great. Yeah, cheers, mate.
James, what's your overall thoughts on this one? Obviously, Neymar, I mean, he's had his injury issues, obviously had some consistency issues. I think we can all agree with that one there. World Cup, he was ready to rock and roll and then apparently got injured there as well. But at the same time, still one of the world's superstars. Saudi Arabia not only eyeing Neymar, eyeing some other top players, and Steven Gerrard, I'm hearing, has his name thrown into the hat as well.
Yeah, always good, Ian, when the news that you and JJ and Ben Jacobs broke on Sunday morning gets the apparently treatment from your own podcast. Thanks for that, Ian. A bit more meat on the bones. And thanks to JJ and Ben for their help on this. But yeah, so Al Hilal, senior delegation from them, they flew into Paris on Friday night with the aim of tempting Neymar. The salary that's going to be on offer there. And I know JJ can shed more light on this from a PSG perspective, but from a Saudi perspective, the salary they're offering is probably more in the region of what Ronaldo's earning, which is at least 200 million a year, as opposed to the sort of 500 million that they were offering Messi. But obviously the big thing for Al Hilal is they missed out on Messi and were stunned, shocked, appalled, however you want to say, that he went to MLS instead. They were apoplectic, and their response is to go out and get Neymar. Could cost them 45 million euros. Like, they're willing to really push this, and I know JJ will speak to this. Neymar's options, as far as I can see, are take the Saudi money or take the Qatari money at PSG.
Yeah, there's definitely no sort of serious possibilities for Neymar at this moment in time, because a lot of the links that you're seeing, like Manchester United, Chelsea, that's all the work of intermediaries at this point, trying to drum up interest. It's not actual interest from the club going to PSG saying, oh, we'd like to discuss a deal. PSG are desperate to get rid of Neymar. That's no secret. Sort of 12 months ago, we were saying that when Luis Campos came in with Christophe Galtier, the decision was made that if possible, PSG would like to move on, from Neymar. It hasn't worked out for either of them, but because of the World Cup, it was impossible to move him on at that stage. So now, with the World Cup sort of in the rearview mirror, and with Neymar finally realizing that, maybe things are not going to work out for him in Paris, there is, I think, probably the greatest chance that we've known since his arrival back in 2017. That Neymar gets moved on, and PSG need this to happen as well, because if they're going to regenerate the squad in the way that they want to, completely rebuild the attack, bring in some extra pieces in other positions as well, they need Neymar off the books, not just in terms of bringing in a transfer fee, because let's face it, they're not going to recoup even half of that world record fee that they paid for him all those years ago. They need his massive wages off the books, and the only real hope at doing that is by selling him to somewhere like Saudi Arabia, where they will arguably be able to give him even a bit of a pay rise, or at least something in line with what he's getting at PSG.
It's totally mad. I mean, the game's crazy right now with some of these rumors, and I mean, we're talking about players. I wouldn't say he's in his prime, obviously, because he's had so many injuries, Mike, here. But this is just like, it's probably the right move for Neymar to get away from PSG and to go to a Saudi Arabia and play.
You've seen his focus shift since he's gotten to PSG. There was so much made about his focus being on football at the start of the season. But when you're seeing things like online poker, money, being out, betting, etc., and we'll stay away from the betting conversation because I know it's a sensitive subject with Ivan Toney in the Prem right now. But I think that is the final frontier for Neymar. MLS is always available, though. Messi's coming. Wouldn't be surprised if Neymar.
Yeah, right. MLS has spent how much money on Messi? They ain't got no money for no stars for
in the future is what I said.
In the future,
you think that Messi's coming to MLS, Nigel, without getting a top deal? This deal that Messi is getting right now. Yeah, what are you on about then?
Whatever deal Messi's getting, he's getting an absolute top deal. MLS doesn't have that money to generate to get someone else now. Messi is the pinnacle, and that's it. What people don't realize is Saudi Arabia are not messing around. This Messi thing has really irked them. So now they're going for every top class player, every young player, and they're going to persuade them to go to Saudi Arabia. So after maybe Messi's stint finishes at MLS, it's going to be like, where's MLS after that? Are they really going to grow the game and push it, or is all the top stars going to be in Saudi Arabia? So it's a lot more competitive than people realize what's going on.
He'll always be able to go back to Barca, though, right?
Look at JJ throwing in a little thing in there.
Free.
James Ed is jumping in here, and he's saying, "Who's the first one to leave CBS if Saudi's broadcasting networks start paying like the football clubs?" He is expecting.
I know who that
is on right now.
I know who that is.
Ian. Yes, it's Ian. His name is Ian.
I've done a lot of reporting.
The kids stopped taking bets on that before it was even on the market.
Jonathan Johnson, you're in Paris right now. All right, you were in Paris. What got you to Paris? I can't imagine. I'm just throwing it out there. Was it the Qatar line that took you to?
The models did in Paris.
Don't forget that my association with PSG predated Qatar's arrival, conveniently, albeit.
Yeah, you got a heads up. You did your job. You're a journalist. You find out shit that we don't know before it actually happens. We appreciate you, JJ, and I'm guaranteeing that Nigel Real Coker will be the first one to take the money. Real quickly, Silvio Berlusconi dies at age 86. Nigel, it's not the time for it now. We're talking about death here. Silvio Berlusconi dies at age 86 here. Listen, this is obviously an important figure in media and politics and in football, of course, in Italy, JJ. This is obviously very sad news to see him pass, but certainly a controversial figure, to say the least, when it comes to football in general and life in general in Italy.
Oh, man, it always comes to me on the really touchy subjects where you expect me to go on like a monologue for about an hour. No, honestly, honestly, love him or loathe him. I think for us football fans, there will always be an affinity towards Berlusconi because of the Milan sides that he had sort of under his presidency. I think we associate so many great players, so many great periods, of that club's history as well with him and his ownership. Obviously it's a sad day for the footballing world, regardless of how people might feel about his politics or his sort of personality away from football. He was a character, and you don't get many like him these days.
I appreciate it's not nice to speak ill of the dead, but this man had a pretty profoundly unpleasant impact on not politics beyond the borders of Italy. If you see him and then you maybe compare that with, I don't want to speak of US politicians on our podcast when I'm not in the US, but I can certainly say that you can draw a line between bunga bunga parties and some of the stuff that happened in my country with Boris Johnson. So yes, I won't speak ill of the dead, but I think his reputation, his legacy is the negative vastly outweighs the positive. Vastly.
Anybody else would like to add here? I noticed that Nigel Real Cooker is keeping his head down, hoping that I don't ask him for a comment on Berlusconi.
Ian, I'm the type of person that likes to bring the world together and bring people together and understand we have a lot more in common than we have apart. So I just have nothing to say.
Yeah, I'll chime in very quickly. I became a fan of Serie A watching the Milan sides dethrone the likes of Juventus, and what didn't happen in his life that we all can agree with, we all don't co-sign with. He put AC Milan back on the map in a way that was much needed in Serie A and world football, delivering the Champions League after almost a decade without a Champions League title. So those are the things I like to think of and remember him in terms of his legacy, not his off the field stuff.
And Monza. Don't forget Monza.
And Monza. Can't leave those guys out. But Milan sides.
All right, I'm trying to prolong the show as long as I possibly can because unfortunately to everybody out there, I've got even more sad news for you, including you, Vic and Amy, who are very, very active in our chats. I appreciate every single one of you. Ed, Vic, Amy, Kishwan, obviously all the ones who are jumping in right now. Matt Osman, some great names out there. This one might hit you a little bit harder, but after the longest season in history, House of Champions is going to be taking a summer break to re-energize and refocus our attentions on some other projects. In the meantime, you can see our faces on the 24/7 Golazo network as we continue to cover the beautiful game in its entirety. Thank you to everybody out there, all our loyal viewers and listeners. You have been a huge part of the show. It's been a great run, guys. We're going to take a break. We don't know what the future holds for House of Champions here, but I just want to leave it with maybe a positive memory. We can go back to the LME days. Luis Miguel Echegaray, who deserves a massive shout out for what he did with Golazo moving into House of Champions. JJ and James, I'll come to you guys first, being the longest members of this show. JJ, we'll start with you. It's something that's been a real positive, and for me personally, I can't thank all of you enough for the effort. I know it takes a great deal of dedication and time and preparation for what you do, but your character and your professionalism and the chemistry we have built here with House of Champions is second to none, and it was the same also for Golazo. So, JJ, take it away. Some maybe positive memories for you, and then we'll go around the house before we get out of here.
I've got so many positive memories. I mean, just from the early days, starting up with Jimmy Conrad and LME, all the way through to this final episode with you guys. And I think the one thing that's never changed throughout the entirety of the shows, whether it was Golazo, whether it was House of Champions, is that I've always looked forward to having these get-togethers with you guys. Like-minded football fans, people who just love the game, want to chat about it, have a great sense of humor, build up a fantastic rapport. And if the viewers and listeners only knew about half of the stuff that pops off in the WhatsApp chat when, sort of outside of hours, I think they would realize that, the chemistry that we have and we're lucky to have, is a very genuine one. And, it's been a fantastic run with you guys. It was too with LME and Golazo before, but, like you said, it's not necessarily a farewell. It's just a bye for now.
Yeah, I don't want to make this like Jake Humphrey hosting on BT Sport and it to go on forever and to shroud the main event. But it's been a real pleasure to get to know everyone that's been involved on House of Champions, to have some of the guests we've had as well. We've had some massive figures from the game join us, and Golazo and House of Champions, but most of all, like to work with the five guys here and LME and Heath and Jimmy before. We talk a lot about teams and, we talk about some of the best teams in the world. Well, I think we've got a really elite group of people here, and look forward to picking up with everyone again in the future, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm forever grateful to be part of this team. I remember coming on, and the first tournament I got to cover a highlight was the African Cup of Nations. I'm forever banging the drum on African players and African football, and to be with a platform that's evolved and continues to evolve, like CBS Sports and House of Champions and formerly Golazo, is a dream come true for me. Most important thing that I've loved is the sense of camaraderie, and it feels like talking with your best mates, or even some of your older or younger brothers. When we fight like family, man. But that family atmosphere here within this group is something that will always stay with me, and interacting with the chat as well. The Vicks, the Eds, the Amy's, the Rafa Cardenases. I've really come to enjoy your input. You guys see the game, and I hope you stick with seeing the game and making your voices heard. Looking forward to the future.
Well, we all know I'm not one to waste or mince my words. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. You guys are absolutely amazing. I'm not going to waffle too much because you guys know how great it is to work with you guys, and we've become friends. We started off as colleagues. We became friends. Apart from one of you, you're still a colleague. We are friends. In my opinion, there is no greater panel in, whether you want to say this American base or whatever it is, that says educated about the game, knowledgeable about the game, and in the sense of teaching the game with great personalities than you guys. Absolute pleasure to work with you guys. For all the fans who churn in, it's absolutely been a pleasure to be on here with you guys and listen to your comments and be able to interact with you guys. Without you guys, we are absolutely nothing. This really is a special panel, and it's so fun to come on it every time. As JJ said, I look forward to it. To our fans out there, I'm not telling you to do this, but feel free to do it. If you want to just keep going on that Golazo network and just telling our name that you want to see us on TV, feel free to keep doing it every day and letting them know. If you want great entertaining football talk and quality football analysis with great knowledge, there is no better panel than this right now. And finally, before I get off, I want to give a big shout out to the man that you guys don't see, the little Irish leprechaun. He can take that however he wants to bloody take it. His name is Des, and he's a ginger and he's Irish. Yes, he is the man behind this all, who puts it all together. Probably one of the greatest producers of footballing content and products that I have seen in America when it comes to the knowledge of the game. And it's always about educating the game and having opinions to discuss. That's what makes football so great. It's not stats based. It's not run this route, do this, do this. There's so much that goes into the game of football that the world knows. And that's what we try to bring to you guys, giving different perspectives, different points of views with a great bit of personality behind it. But James, Des, great producer, absolute pleasure working with you. I know it's not goodbye, but feels like goodbye for me. That's why I'm going to drink some tequila after I finish that. And Ian Joy, you're still a bellend. I love you.
Love you too, boys. And listen, it's like a locker room for me. And the way I stepped into this one, I'd never done podcasting before. Obviously, a shout out to Luis Miguel Echegaray for the great work he did do before I stepped into this hosting chair. And James and JJ, for you guys, I know, Michael, you've done it as well, but hosting, co-hosting, this hasn't been a hosting chair. This has been a part of the team. And we've all had our share of hosting or leading the show, but we just have such great chemistry. And it is, to me, it's that locker room feeling for me, and the way we're open, how honest we are. This is a platform to certainly do that one. And in many ways, if you've not been in the locker room, it's more like that pub feeling where you're going down and having a pint with your friends and basically chatting football. We do that every day. We have a continuous chat on our WhatsApp group that will never ever stop there. But the World Cup will be my greatest memory. I thought the World Cup was phenomenal. All those shows, all those games. It was absolutely incredible work what everybody put into there. So a massive shout out to our team, to you guys. Absolutely excellent what you do. Continue to do great work. You can follow James and JJ across our CBS Sports platforms. Of course, they continue to write and break news, so make sure you're following them on their social media platforms as well. Michael, I know you're going to be involved in some stuff coming up. Nigel, go drink your tequila. We'll see you soon, hopefully never again. But then I want to mention producer Des. massive shout out to Des. What he has done across the board, it's not necessarily just with this show here. What he has done across the board with podcasting, with shows in general, he's going to be a big part of what CBS has got going forward, certainly on the Golazo network as well. So we can't thank Des enough for the great work he did. Igor and all the team behind the scenes for promoting the show as much as they possibly can. And to everybody behind the scenes who basically gave House of Champions love, the graphics and putting it out there on social media, we can't thank you all enough. So much work goes into putting this show out there, and we thank everybody. But before we do go there, James is saying that we should thank somebody else. Who would you like to thank, James?
Well, we do need to thank Fabrizio Romano, very much a regular. He was with us from day one, and always good to hear from Fab.
Yeah, thank you to Fabrizio Romano. Yeah, I'm sure he's going to struggle. Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure. To everybody out there, this show has been for you. Thank you so much for jumping in the comments. The regulars who are in here, the ones who come in and out to just chew at all of us here. I know there's people out there who get after each and every single one of us for our comments, for what we don't do right, or for what we say that is controversial. There certainly wasn't a lack of that on this show, and that's what made it so great. I appreciate you, boys. Thank you for all your great work, and this will be back at some point, no doubt about it. Whether it's called House of Champions or something else, we will be back together as a team in one way or another. If not,
House
have a
without
great
Nigel.
life, everybody.
House without Nigel. That's the next show. Nigel's gone. Yeah. Feel free to put those comments on the Golazo network. You know where the boys are.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel, for the ending words being that. I should have just left it there with the final words. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Thank you so much for listening to House of Champions. Thank you to everybody. Nigel, take us out.
Oh, well, it's absolute pleasure, everyone. Like I said,
we got no time for this one. That's us shining out for House of Champions. Love everybody. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Scally Whiskey's